Ireland spends 22 billion euros annually on public health care, and at least part of that has gone towards the HSE distributing 50,000 crack pipes over the past 5 years to make life safer for drug users. But the question remains, did this plan work? This is Ben Scallan and you're watching Gript Media. It's well known at this point that Ireland has a crippling drug epidemic, and this latest headline certainly reinforces that idea. The HSE has purchased and distributed almost 50,000 crack pipes since 2016 as the number of people using the drug in Ireland continues to rise. Health services began distributing crack pipes several years ago as part of the government's harm reduction strategy outlined in the National Drug and Alcohol Strategy. The sterile glass pipes are distributed by the HSE and local drug treatment agencies to prevent crack cocaine users from engaging in risky behaviours such as sharing pipes or making their own. Like needle sharing, sharing of crack pipes increases the risk of disease transmission, particularly hepatitis C. The health service has spent €65,000 in taxpayer money on these pipes over the last few years, and this policy of giving out drug paraphernalia, which has been in place since 2016, also applies to heroin needles. The Irish state has given out almost 3 million sterile syringes over the same period in order for heroin addicts to legally shoot up safely at a total cost of around €800,000. So we've tried this experiment now for 5 years, and it ultimately begs the question, did it work? Are drug users now contracting hepatitis C less than they were in 2016? Well, while it certainly appears at first glance that the number of drug-related Hep C cases has gone down, there are some major problems here which need to be looked at. First of all, the official data is incomplete. As seen in the HSPC, this trend of Hep C rates going down among drug users should be interpreted with caution, as risk factor data were only available for half of cases notified in the past 4 years. So in other words, the numbers are hazy. Half of the recorded Hep C cases were from unknown causes, and at least some of those could have been unreported drug cases. We just don't know. Understandably, there are some people who contract Hep C from drug use, but they don't necessarily want to admit to their doctor that that's where they got it, so those numbers don't show up in the final figures. So all in all, the figures are not exactly cut and dry or airtight. But for the sake of argument, let's take it at face value that these numbers are 100% accurate, since they're the only ones we have to go on. Let's say that drug-related Hep C is way down since this policy of giving out needles and crack pipes was implemented in 2016. Is that an indication that the scheme has worked? Well, not so fast, because as always, there is more to this story. As reported by the HSPC, the proportion of cases of hepatitis C attributed to injecting drug use has decreased in recent years. 81% between 2007 and 2014, 74% in 2015, and 67% from 2016 to 2019. So what exactly is my point in bringing this up? Well, according to these figures, the rate of drug-related Hep C was already going down precipitously for 9 years by the time we implemented this policy. This graph should give you an idea of what I'm talking about. As you can see, drug-related Hep C was already declining for years. The HSE suddenly starts distributing needles and crack pipes, and then they go, look, the numbers are down, our policy worked like a charm. But realistically, judging by this data available, the figures would have gone down whether they implemented this policy or not. Things were already clearly on a downward trajectory. In fact, if anything, the rate of decline actually slowed down slightly after this policy came in. I wouldn't exactly call that a roaring success. So are Irish drug users and addicts safer now than they were 5 years ago? Well, in short, the answer is no. Sure, they seem to be getting Hep C and some other diseases at a lower rate, but they're still ODing and dying from opioids, crack, cocaine, and methadone poisoning in near record numbers, and there's more of them all the time. As reported in Extra.ie last year, Ireland 3 times above European average for drug-related deaths, which, by the way, ranks us the 3rd highest in Europe, only behind the UK and Sweden. Mark Kennedy, head of recovery services at Merchants Quay Homeless and Drug Services, said drug addiction needs to be treated as a health issue. He said, "What tends to be linked to drug problems and drug overdoses is social exclusion, unemployment, homelessness, and people coming from very disadvantaged circumstances, which have been a big feature in Ireland over the past 10 or 20 years. Now, think about this in the context of the pandemic and the lockdown and all the social isolation and the job losses. Think about all those people now who are going to turn to painkillers and alcohol and illegal drugs in the wake of what's happened. This problem is only set to get much, much worse, and putting a plaster over the issue by saying we'll give them sterile equipment so they don't get Hep C while they slowly kill themselves with heroin or crack is not a solution. As reported in The Independent just a few days ago, cocaine crisis as more are turning to drugs to deal with job losses and mental health issues, experts say. Ireland is facing a cocaine crisis after the COVID-19 pandemic, as health researchers and criminologists predict more people turning to drugs to cope with unemployment and mental health issues. Rehab centres have seen a surge in people seeking help for cocaine addiction during lockdown as concerns grow about the impact on local communities. James Leonard, a youth support officer with the Cork Education and Training Board, told the Irish Independent that cocaine use among young people is a major issue at the moment. In terms of my own research, we went around and did area profiles in Cork to find out the different issues, and cocaine use among young people and parents was one of the biggest problems, he said. And this problem is so widespread, mind you, that it's not confined to towns and cities anymore. Cocaine in Ireland, the average consumer is a farmer or a nurse. It's universal. Gardaí and drug workers say cocaine is being used in even the smallest rural village. According to Gardaí, doctors and drug treatment workers, there was a significant difference between the cocaine situation in 2007 and 2019. While before the problem was largely confined to cities or large towns, today cocaine is being used in even the smallest village in rural Ireland. The cliché of cocaine as the drug of choice for the Dublin finance worker or the middle-class dinner party is long out of date. The average consumer is a farmer or a nurse, according to one Garda. Actually, there isn't an average consumer, it's universal. That's how bad it is. A quick look at any regional paper bears this out. A Letterkenny Garda has described the drug problem in the town as rampant, reads an article in the Donegal Democrat. The drug does not carry the same taboo it once did, he said. People seem to be more open about it, whereas many years ago it would be a substance you would use quite secretly. Dr. Jason Vandervelde, an emergency medicine specialist based in West Cork, said there is now almost a greater stigma surrounding alcohol than there is in relation to cocaine. Before, people who came into emergency departments were quite cagey about how they got injured. Now they quite openly say, "I was off my head on cocaine and this is what happened." Gardaí say that cocaine is still being imported into Ireland by a handful of large gangs such as the Kinahans, who wholesale it down the line. It could go through 4 or 5 dealers before making it into the hands of the user in rural Ireland. With each step, it is likely to have been mixed with other substances to increase its bulk. It's cut with all sorts of things, baking powder, rat poison, said Dr. Vandervelde. So it's Russian roulette when you're taking it. The one thing that we know is it's never pure. According to the Road Safety Authority, 37% of motorists caught drunk driving test positive for cocaine, and 8% of road victim deaths between 2013 and 2016 had cocaine in their system. Overdose deaths from the drug have doubled since 2010, while cocaine is now the drug most commonly found in the system of those who take their own lives through hanging. Really, is that not just awful? And this is part of why border control is so important. It seems like every other week we see a headline about some vast quantity of drugs being shipped in through Rosslare or discovered being imported into the country. All of these headlines are just from the last couple of months. Gardaí seized drugs worth record 53.5 million during pandemic, almost double 2019 haul in bonanza year. Gardaí seized cocaine and diamorphine in Blanchardstown. €40,000 worth of drugs were seized as part of an intelligence operation. Man arrested as Gardaí sees €57,000 worth of cocaine. Gardaí sees €105,000 worth of cocaine from vehicle in Donegal. Gangland nobodies quizzed over €1.5 million coke bust at Rosslare Port. The vast majority of these substances aren't originating here, and they have to come from somewhere. Irish MDMA or ecstasy primarily comes from Belgium and the Netherlands. Coca leaf doesn't grow in Ireland, and most of our cocaine is being trafficked by cartels through Bolivia, Colombia, Peru, and Central America. Cannabis is another one that heavily involves illegal immigration and human trafficking. Today, the Irish cannabis market is primarily made up of cannabis plants dealt by criminal gangs, although individuals, usually cannabis users, have been keen to get in on the act. While domestic-based gangs have traditionally supplied Irish users, a number of international groups, including Polish and Asian gangs, have set up here in recent years. These gangs have set up grow houses, which generally employ foreign nationals to work as gardeners. There can often be a human trafficking element to this, with workers transported from outside the country put in a factory to grow and cultivate, a source familiar with the security side of the drugs trade tells the journal.ie. Sometimes they have no knowledge of what they're doing and they don't even know that they're in Ireland. So ultimately, predatory gangs wouldn't be able to distribute harmful substances in our society if we didn't allow them to enter the country in the first place, which is yet another reason why we have to remain vigilant of our borders. Statistics aside, even just think about it in the context of what you see with your own eyes every day, especially in the cities. You can't go 5 steps in Dublin without seeing somebody absolutely zonked off their head on God knows what. How many homeless people are on the streets because they suffer from some kind of serious substance abuse? And bear in mind, I'm not judging anyone here or saying they're bad people. Not at all. We all make mistakes and everyone deserves a second chance. But we have to call a spade and be brutally honest about these things if we want to fix them. According to the Health Research Board, drug abuse is the most common reason for homelessness in Ireland. These little non-solutions of we'll give you a clean crack pipe, a hearty slap on the back and send you on your way is not going to cut it. And can I say too, we have some weird priorities in this country. More people in Ireland die from drugs every year than road accidents. Yet every time you turn on the TV, you see state-sponsored ads about road safety and not texting and driving, which is of course important, I'm not knocking it. But I don't think I've ever seen an ad telling people about the dangers of drug abuse, which is objectively a much bigger problem. When's the last time you heard a politician talk seriously about this issue other than the odd bit of lip service? They'll go on and on about gender quotas and diversity training ad nauseum, but not about the crippling addictions that grip thousands of Irish people every single year. And while people's health is being destroyed and families are being ripped apart, where are people like Justice Minister Helen McEntee? She seems to be more worried about keeping illegal immigrants in the country and bringing in hate speech laws than she is about hunting down the drug gangs responsible for ruining so many lives or securing our borders against the hundreds of kilos of illegal drugs that are flooding in. It's like the ultimate 1-2 punch from this government. They lock down the place and isolate you for over a year so your job goes out of business and then you end up unemployed and depressed. And then when you hit rock bottom, there's a nice heroin addiction waiting for you at the end to really cement ruining your life. Is this really the future that we want for our people, for our friends, our relatives, our communities, and our fellow citizens, smoking and injecting our lives away? Or do we deserve better than becoming a nation of junkies caught in a vice grip of life-destroying addictions? For all our sakes, we need to get serious about the drug problem in Ireland, and we need to do it fast. Please like and share this video, and if you enjoyed it, please consider signing up for a monthly donation via the link on screen to help us produce more content like this. Alternative media like Gript needs all the assistance it can get, and every donation goes a long way. As always, thanks for watching.